My name is Daniel, and I've always considered myself a reasonable person. I pay my taxes, mow my lawn regularly, and try to be considerate of those around me. For 5 years, I lived peacefully in my suburban home without any issues until Victor moved in next door. From day one, Victor was a nightmare. A retired attorney in his 60s with nothing better to do than monitor the neighborhood for infractions of his personal code. My trash cans were too visible from the street. My trees dropped leaves in his yard. My holiday decorations were excessive. Every week brought a new complaint, each delivered with that smug expression that made my blood boil. I always tried to accommodate him. I rearranged my trash cans, raked his yard, and toned down my Christmas lights. I believed in being a good neighbor, even when the neighbor in question was insufferable. That's what reasonable adults do, right? Then came my 35th birthday. After a promotion at work and finally paying off my student loans, I felt like celebrating for once. I planned a modest gathering, just 20 friends, some food and music, nothing wild or excessive. Being considerate, I dropped off handwritten invitations to all my neighbors 2 weeks in advance, including Victor. I clearly stated the party would end by 10 p.m. on Saturday and included my cell number with a note saying, "Please call if the noise becomes bothersome." The party went exactly as planned. Friends arrived around 4 p.m. We grilled in the backyard, played music at a reasonable volume, and enjoyed ourselves. By 9:30, people were already calling Ubers and saying goodbyes. By 10:15, my house was empty except for 2 close friends helping me clean up. We were quiet, just gathering bottles and wiping down surfaces. Not a single neighbor complained during the party. Not one person texted or called about the noise. It seemed like a perfect evening. Until Thursday morning, when I found a notice taped to my front door. Victor was suing me in small claims court for noise violations, emotional distress, and depreciation of property value caused by my out-of-control party. He was demanding $7,500 in damages. I read the notice 3 times, convinced it was some kind of joke. $7,000 for a birthday party that ended on time? This couldn't be real. But it was. Victor had meticulously documented what he called evidence. Tens of thousands of cars arriving, decibel readings he claimed to have taken with an app on his phone, and photos of beer bottles in my recycling bin the next day as proof of excessive alcohol consumption leading to disorderly conduct. I immediately called him, hoping to resolve this reasonably. "Victor, I got your notice. There must be some misunderstanding. If the party bothered you, why didn't you just call me? I gave everyone my number for that exact reason." "Too late for that now," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "You millennials think you can do whatever you want without consequences. Well, I'm going to teach you a lesson about respecting your neighbors." But the party ended at 10, just like I said it would. Nobody else complained. "That's irrelevant. I have documented evidence of the disturbance, and I intend to see this through. My property value diminishes every time you pull a stunt like this." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Victor, please, can we talk about this like adults? I don't want to go to court over a birthday party." "Should have thought about that before you turned our quiet neighborhood into a nightclub. See you in court." He hung up, leaving me staring at my phone, a mixture of disbelief and rage building inside me. That was the moment something in me snapped. All those months of accommodating his ridiculous demands, of apologizing when I'd done nothing wrong, of walking on eggshells in my own home, it all came crashing down. If Victor wanted war, I would give him war. The first thing I did was document everything. I collected text messages from party guests commenting on how relaxed and pleasant the evening was. I gathered timestamps from rideshare apps showing when people left. I even had security camera footage from my doorbell showing people leaving quietly before 10:15 p.m. Then I knocked on every neighbor's door, explaining the situation and asking if they'd been disturbed by my party. Every single one seemed confused. No, they hadn't heard anything excessive. Several hadn't even realized I'd had a party. 4 of them agreed to write statements saying they hadn't been disturbed. With this evidence, I could have just waited for our court date, confident that Victor's case would be dismissed. But something deeper had awakened in me. Victor had been bullying me, and probably others, for too long, hiding behind his legal knowledge and self-importance. He needed to learn a lesson about consequences. So I did my research. I thoroughly studied our city's noise ordinances. Quiet hours were from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. on weekdays and midnight to 8 a.m. on weekends. During those hours, noise above a certain decibel level could be reported, but outside those hours, perfectly legal. I also discovered that certain types of noise, like lawn maintenance, home repairs, construction work, and vehicle maintenance, were explicitly protected activities, even if they created temporary disruption, and thus began what I now think of as Operation Sleep Deprivation. I'm not normally an early riser, but I quickly became one. Every morning at 7:01 a.m. on weekdays and 8:01 a.m. on weekends, I would start my day with enthusiasm, very loud enthusiasm. Monday, lawn day. I fired up my gas-powered lawnmower at 7:01 a.m. sharp, making sure to spend extra time on the strip of lawn closest to Victor's bedroom window. When the lawn was done, I moved on to the weed whacker, then the leaf blower. None of these activities took more than 30 minutes normally, but I stretched them to a full 2 hours. Tuesday, home improvement day. I dragged out my ladder, power tools, and supplies to inspect my gutters, roof, and siding, all while playing what I considered work music from a Bluetooth speaker. Did I mention I love to sing along loudly to ADS metal when I work? Wednesday, car maintenance day. I pulled my car into the driveway, turned the radio to a classic rock station at a healthy volume, and proceeded to detail my vehicle thoroughly. I paid special attention to testing my horn and car alarm, just to make sure everything was in working order. Thursday, pressure washing day. Have you ever heard a pressure washer at 7 a.m.? The constant high-pitched whine as it strips dirt from concrete is quite something. I found that my driveway, sidewalk, and the side of my house closest to Victor's bedroom needed weekly cleaning. Friday, power tool day. I'd always wanted to get into woodworking, and what better time to start? I set up sawhorses in my driveway and experimented with my new circular saw, drill press, and power sander. The weekend brought variations on these themes, all beginning promptly at 8:01 a.m. After just 3 days of this, Victor came storming over, still in his bathrobe, eyes wild with exhaustion. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his face red with anger. I looked up from the wheel I was polishing, all innocence. "Good morning, Victor. Just taking care of some car maintenance. Is there a problem?" "You know damn well what the problem is. Nobody needs to mow their lawn at 7 a.m. I put down my polishing cloth and gave him my full attention. Actually, I checked the city ordinances quite carefully. Noise restrictions end at 7 a.m. on weekdays. I'm well within my rights. This is harassment. No, Victor, harassment would be, suing your neighbor over a reasonable birthday party that ended on time. What I'm doing is called home maintenance, completely legal." His face contorted with rage. "I'll call the police." "Feel free," I said, turning back to my car. "But you might want to put some pants on first." He stormed off, and sure enough, a police officer showed up about 30 minutes later. I politely explained what I was doing, showed her a printout of the noise ordinance, and assured her I was keeping track of my hours carefully to stay within legal limits. The officer, clearly trying not to smile, told me that I wasn't breaking any laws, but suggested I might want to consider neighborly relations. I nodded seriously and thanked her for her time. Victor's lawsuit still progressed. We had a court date set for a month after he filed. During that month, I didn't miss a single day of my new early morning routine. I could see the toll it was taking on him, the dark circles under his eyes, the way he would glare at me from his window, the increasingly desperate attempts to block the noise with closed windows, and eventually earplugs that I could see him putting in as he peeked through his curtains. 2 weeks into my campaign, Victor's wife, Sharon, knocked on my door. I'd only seen her a few times before. She was a quiet woman who usually just waved from their driveway. "Can we talk?" she asked, looking tired and defeated. "Of course," I said, inviting her in. She declined to enter, instead speaking quietly on the porch. "Victor has always been difficult. He likes things a certain way, but this," she gestured vaguely between our houses, is destroying him. He hasn't slept properly in weeks. I felt a twinge of guilt, but reminded myself how unreasonable he'd been, how he'd tried to extort money from me over nothing. "I understand your husband is upset," I said carefully, "but he's suing me for $7,500 over a birthday party that broke no rules and disturbed no one but him. What would you have me do?" She sighed, looking even more tired. "If he drops the lawsuit, will you stop the morning activities?" "Immediately," I promised, "and I'll go back to being the quiet, respectful neighbor I've always been." The next day, I received notice that Victor had withdrawn his lawsuit. I kept my word. The early morning concerts came to an immediate end. I went back to my normal schedule, doing yard work at reasonable hours and generally keeping to myself. 3 days later, Sharon brought over a bottle of wine and a handwritten apology from Victor. He didn't have the courage to deliver it himself, but the note was surprisingly sincere. He acknowledged his behavior had been unreasonable and promised to be more considerate in the future. Victor and I don't speak much these days. He no longer leaves notes about my grass height or trash can placement. The few times I've had friends over since then, he's stayed quietly in his house with no complaints. Sometimes I catch him looking at my house with a wary expression, especially when I'm carrying lawn equipment or washing my car. On those days, I make sure to smile and wave, just to watch him flinch and hurry inside. I learned something important from this experience. Being reasonable and accommodating is a good default, but some people see that as weakness. They'll take advantage of your desire to keep the peace until you have none left for yourself, and sometimes the only language they understand is consequences. I sleep just fine these days. I can't say the same for Victor, who still jumps at the sound of a lawnmower starting up anywhere in the neighborhood. The funny thing is, I've become friends with several other neighbors through this ordeal. Turns out, Victor had been making their lives miserable for years with his complaints and threats. They'd just been too polite to stand up to him. Last weekend, I hosted another party. Nothing fancy, just a barbecue with neighbors and friends. I still sent out invitations with my phone number, still made sure everything wrapped up by 10 p.m. Victor's curtains remained closed the entire time, but I noticed Sharon came over for a burger and stayed for hours, laughing and chatting with everyone. She told me it was the most fun she'd had in years. As for me, I've never slept better. There's something deeply satisfying about standing up for yourself after years of giving in. The feeling of taking back control, of refusing to be bullied any longer. It's better than any revenge could ever be.